When we hear a song on a movie, we almost always know what to expect. When it's light and airy, we know that love is coming. And when it's dark and dreary, we know that something bad is about to happen. But did you know that we create our own background music in our minds that precede our life events? That background music is the thoughts that we think, and it can affect our feelings that affect our actions as well. So what this video is going to do is show you how to create the best background music to your life so that your thoughts, your feelings, and actions move accordingly. So keep watching. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wells Wellness. It's good to see you here. And today we are discussing how we can create the best possible background music to our lives, aka reframing our thoughts so that we are having a positive mindset throughout the day. And we are going to be using affirmations. So this video is inspired by a podcast I was hearing from John Acuff, who was promoting his book called Soundtracks, and that's kind of where I got that idea from. But I wanted to create my own spin on it and why I think certain affirmations are important. Let's take a mental check. Now let's think about it. What kind of thoughts have you been creating, or what kind of background music have you been creating in your own mind? Has it been negative and where you approach certain situations with fear and worry and anxiety first? Or are you creating a mindset where you're approaching life situations with hope and joy and faith that it's all going to work out? So if you're in the first boat, I know that it may seem discouraging, but I want you to know that you are not alone. Like another video that I made previously, we know that with all 1,000 of thoughts that we have per day, about 80% is negative and about 95% is repetitive. So more likely than not, we are creating negative soundtracks in our mind in which we are approaching life situations with a lot of fear and anxiety. But guess what? We have good news, because God created something called neuroplasticity, where just because we are used to a certain way, our brain doesn't always have to stay that way. Our brain can mold and change and create all new neural connections. So let's jump into it. How do we create positive soundtracks? Or how can we create positive affirmations that will help mold our brain to be more positive? The Webster's Dictionary describes affirmation as the assertion that something exists or is true. So the first thing that we really need to do is make sure that our affirmation is true. But not only that, that is specific to ourselves, it is helpful, and it is kind. So it's not enough for us to just say words like, I am kind, or I am loved, even though those are really positive affirmation and gives our mind a break from negative thoughts. But we can take it a step deeper by finding out specifically why we are loved and why we are kind in a way that's specific to us. That's going to deepen the affirmation and the positive mindset because it is rooted in truth. Similar to the dispute section that we talked about in our last video about how we can reframe negative thoughts. So let's give an example. Imagine that you are discouraged with finances. Saying things like, hey, I am good at finances, I'm good at finances, is a good start, but also it's not going to create a positive mindset for you long term. Because what if you continue to make decisions that are not good with finances? That's kind of going to breach your own trust. And let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What if you are just so truthful? Like, well, I don't know anything about finances. I'm the worst. You see, maybe it is rooted in some truth, but it also doesn't have the brightest tone to that background song, right? But what if you say, I don't know about anything about finances yet? Or I don't know anything about finances, but I'm learning and growing. You see, it's rooted in truth, but the whole tone is different. Now, if you are constantly saying to yourself, I am bad at finances, when finance situations arise, how are you going to react? You're going to react more with fear, with anxiety, and wanting to do anything possible to avoid it. But if you are singing a song or creating that background song that, I don't know anything about finances yet, but I'm willing to learn, not only are you humble enough to admit it, but you're able to be hopeful about finances in the future and how it can help you. So when finance situations arise, you have some humility there where you can ask questions, but it's not rooted in fear where you avoid it completely, but it's rooted in the willingness to learn. So do you see how just changing that tone, that background music, you can say, to your mind is going to help you to approach situations differently. Also, you want to make sure that your background music is kind to yourself. A lot of times we are so kind to other people, but when it's ourselves, that we beat ourselves up. And that's why it's really common for us to talk about our inner critic and how we are our own worst enemy at times. And usually that's correct, because we have a view of ourselves that we should be doing everything perfectly all the time. And you know what? Think about a friend in your situation. What would you tell them to encourage them and start having that process and that kindness even towards yourself, and change from that inner critic into that inner champion? So just to give you an example of a soundtrack I have, it goes like this. God has given me the ability to choose to live by faith and not let fear rule over me. You see, some key points that I want to bring out is that it's rooted in my values and it is very specific to me. It's true, God has given me the ability to choose faith over fear, and it's helpful. It's a good reminder for me to make decisions based on faith and not fear. And lastly, you just want to make sure it's kind. This is something that I would definitely say to a friend. So as you start creating your own affirmation or creating your own positive soundtrack, start small. Start with a negative soundtrack that you notice that you're saying to yourself, and how can you counteract it to something that's specific, true, helpful, and kind. And just start repeating that more often. And as we close, I do want to encourage you to repeat this affirmation multiple times throughout the day. I want you to imagine that your old song that you've been singing most of your life is in a boxing ring with the new song that you're trying to sing. Which one is going to win? We know hands down the older one is going to win, naturally, because it's stronger. So just think about how you can constantly start starving that song so that it's weaker, and start feeding the new one. So that's why it's important to not get discouraged if you think the old thought numerous times, but to start lessening it and really maximize on saying the positive one, the new one, as much as possible, because now you are strengthening that particular song and that neural pathway so that it can defeat the older one. And I know that it sounds like a lot of work and a lot of effort, but just think on what's on the other side. Like, imagine the life that you can live when you're approaching life with joy, empowerment, and excitement for the future. And imagine how you can view yourself the way that God views you, or your friends view you, or your close family, and how positive they feel about you. Think of that joy that you can have as you navigate through life. What kind of soundtrack that would be. So I hope that this was helpful, and I would love to know your thoughts on affirmations. Have you tried them in the past? Do you think you would like to try them now? I would love to hear your thoughts below. And I know sometimes it's difficult, but if you are wanting to make this a daily habit, you can totally check out my playlist that helps you to create a day-to-day habit sustainably, as well as I do offer one-on-one coaching, which you can see in the description box below. So it was good seeing you here, and I'm so happy that you made it all the way to the end. So be balanced, be whole, and be well. Have a good one.